Life doesn't change by accident. Life changes by decision. Every one of us is living in patterns, ways of thinking, behaving, and responding that shape the results we see every day. The truth is, if you keep repeating the same pattern, you'll keep living in the same cycle. But the moment you choose to break that pattern, you open the door to a different future. Think about it. Most people don't fail because of one big mistake. They fail because of a daily pattern of small compromises, small excuses, small delays. It's the same routine that slowly becomes a cycle of mediocrity. The same morning habits, the same conversations, the same avoidance of responsibility, the same neglect of discipline. Those patterns create a loop that plays over and over until you decide enough is enough. The day you break the pattern, you break the cycle. The moment you refuse to keep repeating what has been holding you back, you set yourself on a different trajectory. Success doesn't come from wishing. It comes from rewriting your daily script. If you want wealth, you've got to break the pattern of spending every dollar that comes in. If you want health, you've got to break the pattern of eating what's convenient instead of what's right. If you want strong relationships, you've got to break the pattern of neglecting communication or taking people for granted. And if you want a strong mind, you've got to break the pattern of feeding it junk, whether from conversations, media, or your own excuses. Here's the good news. The cycle is not permanent. The cycle is just a reflection of the pattern. Change the pattern and the cycle has no choice but to break. That's the law of life. But here's the challenge. Patterns don't break themselves. You have to confront them. You have to get honest about the habits that are shaping your destiny. Maybe you've been living in the cycle of tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll start. Tomorrow I'll fix it. Tomorrow I'll take action. The truth is, tomorrow will look exactly like today unless you make a new decision. So the question is simple. What pattern is robbing you of your potential? What cycle have you been tolerating? And are you willing today, not someday, but today, to break it? When you break the pattern, you create a new rhythm for your life. You design your future instead of drifting into it. You reclaim control of your time, your habits, your energy, and your results. The day you break the pattern is the day you take back your power. Your life is a reflection of the patterns you repeat daily. If you want to understand where you are today, just look at the little things you've been doing consistently over the last few months, the last few years. Success is not built on what you do once in a while. Failure doesn't come from a single day of neglect. Both success and failure are the sum total of repeated patterns. What you've chosen to do or not do every single day. Think about it. If you eat an unhealthy meal once, nothing happens. But if you eat poorly day after day, the pattern becomes visible in your energy, your health, your body. If you spend recklessly one time, no big problem. But if the pattern of spending continues, it shapes your financial future. One late night of procrastination won't ruin your life, but a repeated pattern of wasted evenings will rob you of opportunity. Life is simply echoing back the patterns we practice. Most people underestimate the power of daily repetition. They think the little choices don't matter. But little choices are the building blocks of patterns, and patterns are what build a life. What you repeat shapes what you become. If you repeat discipline, you become disciplined. If you repeat laziness, you become lazy. If you repeat gratitude, your life begins to feel rich. If you repeat complaining, life begins to feel heavy. The pattern writes the story. Now here's the important part you cannot hide from your patterns. They reveal themselves in the results you're experiencing. If you want to know someone's patterns, don't listen to what they say. Watch how they live. The hours they keep, the way they treat people, the way they use their money, the habits they've formed. All of those reveal the patterns that are shaping their destiny. The good news is patterns are not permanent. They can be changed. And the moment you decide to shift a pattern, you begin to shift your life. If you want to improve your health, you don't need to change everything overnight. Just establish a new pattern. Maybe it's walking daily, maybe it's drinking water instead of soda. If you want to change your finances, set a new pattern. Save a little every time you get paid. The results won't appear instantly, but over time the cycle bends in your favor. The reason most people don't change their life is because they want the big event, the dramatic shift. But life is not transformed by one grand gesture. It is transformed by a consistent pattern of small, wise decisions. Show me your daily routine, and I'll show you your future. If the pattern is strong, the cycle will be strong. If the pattern is weak, the cycle will be weak. Patterns also influence your thinking. If you consistently feed your mind negativity, criticism, gossip, and fear, that pattern will soon show up in your attitude and outlook. But if you feed your mind with inspiration, ideas, and knowledge, that pattern will eventually show up in your confidence and vision. What you allow daily shapes what you believe is possible. It's easy to blame circumstances, luck, or the actions of others for where we are in life. But the honest truth is this: our life is a reflection of the patterns we have chosen to repeat. No one else can choose your pattern for you. You may be influenced by your environment, but ultimately, you decide what to practice day after day. And if you don't like your reflection, you can change the pattern. So ask yourself, what patterns am I repeating? Do they match the life I say I want? If not, it's time to create new ones. Because the smallest adjustment in a pattern can completely redirect the cycle. One new habit, practiced daily, has the power to rewrite the script of your life. Remember, your life doesn't respond to what you occasionally dream about or hope for. It responds to what you consistently do. The secret is in the pattern, and once you understand that, you hold the power to change any cycle, any outcome, and any future you choose. Cycles don't change until patterns change. That's a simple truth, but it explains why so many people stay stuck in the same situations year after year. They want their life to look different, but they continue repeating the same behaviors that created their current reality. You can hope for a better cycle, you can pray for a better cycle, but until you adjust the patterns that feed it, the outcome will always stay the same. Think of a cycle as the harvest and the patterns as the seeds. If you keep planting corn, you're not going to wake up one season and find wheat in the field. The harvest only changes when the seed changes. And in life, the seed is the pattern you practice every day. The reason cycles seem so stubborn is because people are trying to get new results without planting new habits. They're looking for change without change. But life doesn't work that way. Take finances, for example. A person can complain about being stuck in the cycle of debt. They can talk about how unfair it is, how the system is against them. But if they keep spending more than they earn, if they keep using credit instead of discipline, then the cycle can't change. The numbers may shift temporarily, but sooner or later, the pattern re-establishes the same outcome. It's not a matter of luck, it's a matter of habit. Or think about health. Someone might not like the cycle of low energy, weight gain, or constant illness. But if the daily pattern is fast food, late nights, and no exercise, then the cycle will continue. You don't get out of the health cycle by wishing for vitality. You get out by breaking the pattern. Choosing different food, building new routines, moving your body. When the pattern shifts, the cycle begins to shift with it. The same is true in relationships. If your cycle is full of broken trust, constant conflict, or shallow connections, you've got to examine the patterns that created it. Maybe it's a pattern of neglect, or a pattern of poor communication, or a pattern of selfishness. Relationships don't improve simply because you want them to. They improve when you choose new patterns of attention, listening, and respect. Here's the real challenge: patterns are often invisible because they've become automatic. People don't even realize they're stuck in them. That's why life feels like it's on repeat. But if you're honest enough to step back and look at your routines, your choices, your thought processes, you'll start to see the pattern that has been feeding the cycle. And once you see it, you can change it. The danger is believing that cycles are permanent. People say, that's just how I am. That's just how life works. This is my fate. But cycles are not fate. They're feedback. They're showing you what your repeated behavior has been producing. The cycle is simply a mirror. And if you want the reflection to change, you've got to move differently in front of the mirror. It doesn't take a dramatic overhaul. Many times, one simple change in a pattern can begin to break the old cycle. If you start saving a little consistently, the financial cycle shifts. If you start walking 30 minutes a day, the health cycle shifts. If you start speaking encouragement instead of criticism, the relationship cycle shifts. The power is not in the one-time act, but in the consistent repetition of a new pattern. Cycles are stubborn, but they're not unbreakable. They hold on tightly until they're starved of their fuel. And the fuel is the pattern. Stop feeding the cycle with the same routine, and it begins to weaken. Feed it a new pattern, and it begins to transform. So, if you want to change your cycle, stop asking for a different outcome and start designing a different pattern. Because the moment you change what you consistently do, you automatically change what you consistently get. And that is the doorway to a new life. Small, repeated habits shape destiny more than big events. At first, that sounds almost too simple to be true. We love to think that life changes in dramatic moments. One big opportunity, one lucky break, one life-altering event. But if you look closely at the lives of successful people, or even at the lives of those who have struggled, you'll notice something. It's not the rare event that determines the outcome. It's the daily habits that get repeated quietly, often unnoticed, over time. Think about success. Most people imagine it arrives with a big breakthrough, promotion, a windfall, a lucky meeting. But success is rarely the result of a single day. It's built on years of habits showing up, working with consistency, learning, growing, saving, investing. Those little disciplines compound, and eventually they create a moment that looks like an overnight success. But it isn't overnight, it's the reward of small, repeated choices stacked on top of each other. The same goes for failure. One bad day doesn't ruin a life. One poor decision won't destroy a future. But a repeated pattern of small neglects, skipping exercise, wasting hours, ignoring opportunities, spending instead of saving, over time, those habits add up. At first, the cost is invisible. You don't notice it after a day or a week. But after years, the cycle becomes clear. The destiny that emerges is not a mystery. It's the natural harvest of small, repeated habits. That's why habits are more powerful than goals. A goal gives you direction, but a habit shapes your daily movement. You might have a goal to be healthy, but if your daily habit is soda and fast food, the goal means little. You might have a goal to be wealthy, but if your daily habit is spending without discipline, the goal will never materialize. A goal without habits is like a destination without a vehicle. You know where you want to go, but you're not moving toward it. The beauty of small habits is that they don't feel overwhelming. You don't have to do everything at once. You just have to start with one action, repeated consistently. Read a few pages every day and you build knowledge. Save a few dollars every week and you build wealth. Exercise a few minutes each day and you build health. The individual act looks small, but over time it shapes the course of your life. We tend to overestimate the impact of big events and underestimate the power of small habits. But ask yourself what really builds character. It's not one heroic moment. It's the repeated choices to stay honest, to be disciplined, to follow through. What builds relationships? It's not one grand gesture. It's the repeated habit of listening, caring, giving time. What builds financial freedom? It's not one big deal. It's the repeated habit of earning, saving, and investing wisely. Habits are like a compass. They quietly guide you day after day toward a destination you may not even realize you're heading toward. That's why it's so important to examine your small, daily actions. Because whether you're aware of it or not, those actions are shaping your destiny. They're leading you somewhere. The only question is, are they leading you where you want to go? Here's the great news: you can choose your habits. You don't have to stay stuck in old routines. Every time you repeat an action, you reinforce it. And every time you choose a new action, you weaken the old one. That means your destiny is not fixed, it's flexible. If you don't like the direction your life is heading, you don't need a miracle. You just need new habits, practiced consistently. So don't wait for the big event to change your life. Don't wait for the perfect opportunity or the dramatic breakthrough. Start with the small things, build the right habits. Because the truth is, the small habits you practice every day are more powerful than any one-time event. Over time, they'll create the person you become, the results you see, and the life you live. That's the real power. Destiny shaped by discipline, one small act at a time. Excuses repeated long enough become prisons. At first, an excuse seems harmless. It's just a way to delay responsibility, to soften the weight of discipline, to explain away why something wasn't done. But excuses, when they become a pattern, have a strange power. They don't just protect us from short-term discomfort. They trap us in long-term limitation. What starts as a shield quickly turns into a cage. The reason is simple: every excuse is a story we tell ourselves to justify staying the same. I don't have the time. I don't have the resources. It's not the right season. I'll start tomorrow. At first, those phrases sound reasonable, but if you listen carefully, they're just barriers we've built with our own words. And the longer we repeat them, the more solid those barriers become, until one day they feel like prison walls. Excuses rob us twice. First, they steal today by keeping us from action. Second, they steal tomorrow by chaining us to the same cycle of inaction. And here's the hidden danger: excuses often feel comfortable because they let us off the hook. They give us a way to avoid responsibility without guilt, at least for the moment. But in reality, they're costing us the very future we want. Think about someone who says, "I'll start saving when I earn more money." That excuse feels logical, but it becomes a prison. Why? Because without the discipline to save from a little, they'll never save from a lot. Or someone who says, "I don't have time to exercise." That excuse seems valid in a busy life, but it becomes a prison of poor health, limiting energy and shortening opportunity. Every excuse, no matter how small, adds another bar to the cage. Over time, the excuses pile up until they create a mindset of limitation. The person doesn't just have excuses anymore. They become identified with them. Their language shifts from I could to I can't, from someday to never. That's the ultimate prison, when excuses become part of who we are. But here's the truth. Excuses are just stories, and stories can be rewritten. The prison only holds power as long as you keep telling yourself the same lines. The moment you change the narrative, the walls begin to crumble. Instead of, I don't have time, you start saying, I'll make time. Instead of, I don't know how, you say, I'll learn. Instead of, I can't, you say, I'll try. The shift in language opens the door to a shift in life. The question is, how do you escape the prison of excuses? It starts with awareness. Catch yourself in the act of making them. Pay attention to the words you repeat. Ask yourself honestly, is this reason real, or is it just comfortable? Because most excuses aren't based on truth, they're based on fear, laziness, or resistance. Once you call them out, they lose their power. Next, replace the excuse with a small action. Don't wait for the perfect conditions. They'll never come. If you say you don't have time to read, commit to 1 page a day. If you say you don't have money to save, put aside $1. If you say you can't exercise, walk for 5 minutes. Small actions break the excuse cycle, and once you prove to yourself that you can, the prison begins to open. Excuses repeated long enough become prisons, but responsibility repeated long enough becomes freedom. Responsibility may feel heavy in the moment, but it creates strength, confidence, and results. Excuses may feel light in the moment, but they create regret, limitation, and stagnation. The choice is always ours. Do we want the comfort of excuses or the freedom of responsibility? So take a close look at your life. Where are you building prisons with your words? Where have you been repeating excuses so long that you've started to believe them? And more importantly, what small action can you take today to prove the excuse wrong? Because the moment you stop feeding excuses, you start building freedom. And that's how you step out of the prison and into the life you were meant to live.